About 4 hours, the UFL Week 7 kicks off, and it is officially time for Week 7 pick'ems and preview. But before we get into that, I've got to say, eBay is a amazing place because I forgot to mention yesterday when I did the unboxing for the Royal Retro jerseys, which I got on here, the DC Defenders Jordan Ta'amu jersey is what I got in the mail earlier this week. Yes, my friends, it is a game-worn XFL Vegas Vipers helmet. And from what I've been told, I have tried to do some research. There's only 2 players that wore this exact style of XFL helmet with the things here and it being the brand it is. Was Martavius Bryant, and there was one other player I couldn't find the name, but with the based on where the logos are at on the helmet and everything like that, it appears from what I've seen it is Martavius Bryant's helmet from the Vegas Vipers in 2023, which is absolutely amazing. The second I saw these uniforms, these helmets, especially when I was on the sideline in Vegas for the covering the team or whatnot and getting to take pictures of these helmets, I wanted one. I wanted one so bad, and I've kept an eye on any of the collector sites that the UFL has done with vaulted stuff with helmets, never anything with the Vipers. And last week I came across a listing for Vegas Vipers helmet. I had to get it. It is amazing. Absolutely the coolest memorabilia to have from the XFL in 2023. But moving forward, let's go ahead and dive into tonight's game, the DC Defenders. And let's talk about that because the last time the DC Defenders faced the Brahmas in week 4, they lost 24-18 in DC. This game tonight on Friday Night Fox in San Antonio. It was only 3 weeks ago that the San Antonio Brahmas, a winless team, came into Audi Field and shocked the undefeated DC Defenders and beat them 24-18. Fast forward 3 weeks and the DC Defenders have only had one other loss on their record, while a struggling Brahmas are really trying to find their identity in the XFL division. They currently sit at 1-5 and have not got a win since that game in DC. With Kellen Mond being pushed from the starter position to quarterback 3 for this game, the Brahmas will again start Kevin Hogan with Jarrett Guanatano being the backup quarterback. The biggest issue I see right now for the Brahmas is the fact that they haven't scored a touchdown in over 140 minutes and 56 seconds, which came in week 3 against the DC Defenders, which is a major disadvantage for the young head coach, interim head coach, Peyton Pardee. Kevin Hogan going into tonight's game comes off a 26-3 loss to the Stallions and was 17 for 26 with 179 yards with 1 interception last week. This week, he will need to lead his team in the end zone and complete a drive for a touchdown to even have a chance against a Defenders team who is also coming off a loss to the Michigan Panthers last week. Jordan Ta'amu, who was 19 for 36 for 259 yards and 2 touchdowns, did pretty well last week, but their defense just couldn't hold up the Red Hot Panthers or hold off the Red Hot Panthers and the star of the league, Bryce Perkins. With the San Antonio Brahmas struggling to get any offense going, it'll be up to the Defenders to keep them from scoring a touchdown again in the game to make sure they somehow don't repeat week 3. Last week against the Panthers, the defense didn't really come through due to the legs of Perkins and just overall defensive line that did a great job for the quarterback. Defenders had no sacks last week and no turnovers and will need to get some action going on the defensive side of the ball. Defenders, which, again, keep in mind, they need to do something, but at the same point, the San Antonio Brahmas haven't really been doing anything on offense, but I think a lack of like defense on the defender's side could lead to opening up that just flood of offensive passing, rushing, and potentially scoring from the Brahmas, who again have not scored a touchdown in 140 minutes of play since week 3 against this DC Defenders. Defenders will need this win to stay ahead of the Renegades and continue to stay on track with the Battlehawks, which looks most likely will be the XFL Division Championship game in just 4 weeks. Question is, where will it be held? Audi Field or in St. Louis? And again, that all depends on the Renegades, and we'll talk about them here shortly. So in this game here, I will say straight up, we're going to put it on the screen here and make sure that we also put my record, which I apologize here, I did not have up for the overall thing, but let's put that on the screen here. I am currently sitting at 14-10 in picks this year. So with tonight's game, DC Defenders being 4-2 going against the 1-5 San Antonio Brahmas. Can they make lightning strike twice and defeat the Defenders tonight? Well, here's my pick. No, I do not think so. I think the Defenders are going to continue what they have done. Now, again, we know their offense has been a little muddy at times. Jordan Ta'amu hasn't been the greatest, but with going against the Brahmas tonight, to me it just doesn't look like it could be that great of a, not necessarily a matchup, but more so of an even contested game like we saw when they first met earlier this season. I just don't think we're at the same place here. Again, Kellen Mond has now been put as the third quarterback. Kevin Hogan being the starter tonight. I'm not quite sure if he can just get the job done for the San Antonio Brahmas, and that's why I am going with the DC Defenders. Next up on the list here, we have the Michigan Panthers, red hot, playing at Choctaw Stadium for the first time since the merger. And this game, in my opinion, is going to be excellent. I think there is a dynamic to both of these teams. And funny enough, these are both my teams. So on the XFL side of things, I was a huge Renegades fan. On the USFL side of things, I picked the Michigan Panthers. One, because in 2022, they had Jeff Fisher as their head coach, who was a former Tennessee Titans head coach. I'm a huge Titans fan, so I instantly went to the Michigan Panthers at that point. Ever since then, I've stayed with the Panthers, but with the merger, it's kind of hard to, pick a side, especially when both teams are not that great last year. They weren't that great. I mean, Michigan did get to the USFL Conference Championship game, but again, their kryptonite being the Birmingham Stallions, just not that great. Now we have them playing in Choctaw Stadium. I was going to go to this game, but unfortunately, just travel did not work out this well this year to go to any UFL game. So I've been supporting in other ways, paying for season tickets for this year. I still have my season tickets for the Renegades and have got those off to people that wanted to go to the games that I know. So that's been something that I've done this year, but definitely will get out there next year, especially if they have some expansion. But in this game, going back, it only took 17 weeks of regular play in the UFL for the Michigan Panthers to play at Choctaw Stadium, and it is the last home game for the Arlington Renegades. Keep in mind, in this game, they are giving free tickets to kids for this game. I think season ticket holders are getting 4 extra tickets loaded to their accounts to give to friends and family. They are trying to pack out Choctaw Stadium for the last game and try to get as many as possible in there for attendance, which is absolutely amazing because I can't wait to see what that number is now that they have distributed 4 extra tickets for each season ticket holder. So that is absolutely amazing. That number should go up with the distribution and overall people in attendance. We could see essentially the highest game because of that. I don't know what they're doing with the free kids tickets, if those are going to be counted in that. The reason I say that is I know back in 2022 with the USFL, during that first game where the Birmingham Stallions and the Generals had over 17,000 attendance, from what I heard, there was a lot more in attendance that they did not count because they were letting kids in for free without tickets. So that's something I have heard, that you do have to get a ticket. It's still free from Renegades. So I think that's where we could see a little bit of difference in attendance for this game. But going back to the game itself, where we're talking about this, the Renegades season could be truly on the line tomorrow when it comes to standings in the XFL conference. With DC and St. Louis leading the way, the big part about the Renegades is we got some tough news yesterday that Renegades have lost their star running back due to a season-ending injury, and that, of course, is Kalen Balaj, where he suffered a separated shoulder in last week's game against St. Louis. This will require surgery, ending his season. In the wake of his season-ending injury, the Renegades did go out and sign Tony Jones Jr., who has recent NFL experience where he has been with the Saints, the Broncos, and the Cardinals. He did play in one Cardinals regular season game last year and rushed for a touchdown and 55 yards. This may take a while for him to get adjusted to the offense, and as of this game for tomorrow, he is not listed on their depth chart, but at least the Renegades can rely on Day-Day Hunter, who has moved into the number one running back position for him. And then you have Devon, I believe it's Devon Smith as second. But that won't be the Renegades' only issue with the offense. And we've got to talk about the lingering issue, and that, of course, is with the Spring King himself, Luis Perez. It seems like despite having the yardage and quite an amazing kickoff to the season, everything week after week, we are seeing more and more of a decline from Luis Perez and this offense. Last week against the Battlehawks, he was sacked, last week against the stacked Battlehawks offense, they were able to hold the Renegades to only 2 field goals and keep them out of the end zone. Luis Perez was 16 for 23, 141 yards, and 1 interception last week, while the run game was near to nothing as well, with only 25 attempts for 82 yards. They will need to get something going on the offense and stick to it. It seems like in the past couple years, and I've kind of talked about this with the Renegades, it's very similar to what the Tennessee Titans have always done, being a huge Titans fan, is they will get one style of play going very well. And like when they had Derrick Henry, the Titans, and they continued to use him often, yes, defenses were picking that up, but he was still doing really good. And then they would just change to a passing game that wasn't really working at all for whoever they had, whether it was Mariota, you had, who else was in there? Will Levis this past season, obviously he didn't play with Derrick Henry getting passed, but overall, when you look at this team with the Renegades, it's almost the same issue. They are starting to commit the same issues with penalties. That has gone up, and changing how the offense is run once they get something going. And as the season goes on, they change it up, and then it just kind of defeats it and fails at that point. This has been a thing for the Renegades in prior seasons, no matter when it's been. Obviously, in 2023, when they only had 4 wins and got into the playoffs and won the championship game, it's because they changed up their offense late in the game with Luis Perez coming in with that trade from the Vegas Vipers, and that leading to essentially them winning the championship. In this scenario, this red-hot team up front has lost the last 2 games, and with who they are facing tomorrow, could be a nail in the coffin for the home finale for the Renegades. And that's the thing. When we're talking about that team that they will be facing, it seems to be the hottest team in the UFL with the most put together team around, with Bryce Perkins' outstanding performance week after week. The Panthers last week didn't miss a beat when facing the best in the XFL conference, the Defenders, which, mind you, Bryce Perkins was named Offensive Player of the Week last week, and that was even with one of their top wide receivers being suspended, Samson Nakua. Well, guess what? This red-hot team just got Samson Nakua back tomorrow. He is back on the depth chart. That suspension has been served. And I think what we are about to see is a very well-focused and put-together team that just 2 weeks ago was struggling from a head coach perspective to just pick a starting quarterback. You had Bryce Perkins. You had... Danny Edling. I drew a blank there for a second. Going between those, and we were seeing that inconsistency was costing them games. Well, now that last week, Mike Nolan officially announced that Bryce Perkins was quarterback one, he was moving forward with him. This complete team wrapped around that, and Bryce Perkins did as well. Now that we have that situation in the past, they are doing amazing, and there is no stopping this Panthers offense and defense. Just in their game last week against the Defenders, Perkins put up 13 completions out of 18 for 188 yards and 2 touchdowns with a completion percentage of 72.2%. And a quarterback rating of 142.8. Let's not forget the Panthers' run game, which could easily make a statement against the Renegades quick, with Toa Tao with 19 rushing attempts for 94 yards and 1 touchdown last week, along with Nate McCrary for 9 attempts and 44 yards and a touchdown, along with Perkins' legs. He was able to get 9 attempts for 27 yards and 1 touchdown. This offense all around, with Turner and Hikatini both having a receiving touchdown last week as well. If the Renegades defense can't stop this offense, there is no chance they win this game. With that being said, who am I taking on the screen here for a pick? Well, I am going against the Renegades this week because I think we are in for a treat with the Michigan Panthers, Bryce Perkins, and this offense. I think it is going to be a long game for the Arlington Renegades. If they can't get something going early, this is going to be a shutout game, but I do think it is going to be an absolute amazing game that we see from Arlington, Texas tomorrow. So moving on to Sunday's games, we have none other than the 3-3 Houston Roughnecks taking on the 4-2 Birmingham Stallions in Birmingham. An upset could change the entire USFL conference and how things are looked at. The Houston Roughnecks lost their last battle to the Stallions in Week 4 in Houston, 23-16. It wasn't a landslide and wasn't a bad game at all. Since then, though, the Roughnecks have their quarterback one in Jalen McClendon, and quite frankly, the Roughnecks look like they are on a whole different level than they were in Week 4. But it's been a lot to do with their defensive play in the last couple weeks, where defensive back Rashad Williams has stood out massively for the Roughnecks, where he is currently tied in the UFL in second with 2 interceptions. If the defense can get into Case Cook's face or cause him to pass the ball down the field recklessly, we could see Williams step up where they need to be to continue to decompress the Stallions offense like we have seen almost this entire season. But we'll talk about that in a second. But going back to the offense, Jalen has been lights out last week, going 20 for 28, 149 yards, and a touchdown with a completion percentage of 71.4 and a quarterback rating of 95.7. Quandre White is someone to keep an eye on with the rush game, as he rushed for 50 yards in 13 attempts last week. Well, the rushing game hasn't been much for the Roughnecks, so they will have to figure out some different ways to really get ahead of the game on the Stallions defense to be successful on Sunday. I think the rushing game is going to be something to look out for. Usually the Stallions defense is really good at breaking up passes and things like that. It's kind of that run game that kind of starts falling apart for for the Stallions, and I'm really trying to look at potentially, could we see Jalen McClendon use his legs? He's not really much of a running quarterback, but he has been known to use his legs for some rushing, so that could be a switch up for that offense that could see the Stallions kind of step back a little bit in that way. But as for the Stallions, their offensive line needs to step up massively in this game before they ended up going through every quarterback possible. There's been so many injuries when it comes to quarterbacks this year for the Stallions that I am surprised their record is where it's at. I think they're at a very vulnerable point at this point of the season as a team, and are sitting at a position that this team has never dealt with since basically before the 2022 USFL season. They've been a dominant force year after year after year, and we're starting to see a little bit of crack in that this year. Case Cookus, who didn't have that bad of a weekend last week, throwing 16 for 23, 166 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Obviously, we know that Andrew Peasley came into the game and got hurt and is out for the season. Again, talking about the quarterbacks being hurt. The run game last week was almost non-existent outside Person Jr. with 9 attempts for 32 yards and a touchdown, and 27 yards for Maribel. It is as their receiving core that really have come through against the Brahmas last week with a combined 2 touchdowns from Amari Rogers and Jay Sternberger. Cookus will need to rely on that air game if he can't get something going on the ground. And quite frankly, it's going to depend, as I stated in the first part of this, of what the O-line does and can cover Cookus to have enough time to allow him to get some plays off. He was sacked, I believe, 3 or 4 times last week, when it may have been 3, and the 1 sack that caused the injury on Peasley came on a sack, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So when it comes to this game, who am I picking to walk away with a victory? Well, this may be a shocker the most, but I am going for an upset. I think Houston can do it. I think this is going to be a change in guard in the USFL division with the UFL overall. We could see potentially something that may have not been seen since essentially really the Renegades won the 2023 XFL championship. I think we have a similar thing brewing with the Houston Roughnecks here. And for their sake, and whatever else it is for Jalen McClendon and company, I really hope that they can pull this off. I think this will be a really good game. But I think it'll come down probably to the last couple minutes of the game, where I think Houston will have that deciding factor here. That, of course, is if, again, Cookus can stay healthy for the game. There's just a lot riding with that offensive line that is not covering that well, and that is what is causing defenses to get into the face quarterbacks, to make those hits on them, and has caused injuries in the long game that has been a problem for the Birmingham Stallions overall. Then we move on to the next one, and that is the final game with the St. Louis Battlehawks facing the Memphis Showboats. With the depth chart not being available for this game because it is a afternoon game on Sunday, or the later game on Sunday, there wasn't much of a preview I wrote up for this game, but I will say this game I think is going to be very one-sided. There is a lot of trouble with the Showboats. I know with their defense, maybe stepping up a little bit, but quite frankly, the more and more I think that Max Duggan and the St. Louis Battlehawks offense get more practice time in and everything like that, as being more of a cohesive team on the offense. Their defense looks very well. I just do not think at all in this game that the Memphis Showboats are going to walk away with a win, unfortunately. I think they are pretty much done. I think this is their final show that trying to get it somewhat into the playoffs. There's been no teams announced that they've been eliminated, but I think that when it comes to the USFL conference here, I think this would be the shining light, especially if Houston can get that win over Birmingham. I think this will really set the tone for Sunday, for the afternoon game, where potentially the Showboats are pretty much done if they lose this game. I think it's still going to be a very uphill battle if they win it. I don't know. I don't think there's a chance in hell they get into the playoffs. But in this game here, I had to go, of course, with the St. Louis Battlehawks moving to 5-2, which again is just going to make that matchup with the DC Defenders potentially even bigger once we get down the line there. Because if I'm not mistaken, I believe in week 10, the St. Louis Battlehawks do travel to DC to play the Defenders, and I think that's going to be a big deal in the overall standings. I think that game is most likely going to determine who gets home field advantage and who is on the road, but we'll see. One small little turn from DC or the Battlehawks in this matter could completely change the way the division is, and obviously what Arlington does as well the rest of the year. But if I had to put money on it, I think we are going to see the DC Defenders and St. Louis Battlehawks in the XFL Conference Championship game. And quite frankly, I think it will be in St. Louis is my guess, but time will only tell with the standings and what comes out of the final two for the XFL Conference. So let me know in the comments your picks, and we will see you later tonight for the full recap of the Friday Night Lights game or UFL After Dark game. And we will have a full recap of that with the DC Defenders and the San Antonio Brahmas from the Alamo Dome. We'll see you on the flip side. Have a great one, everyone.